Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of The Daily Prompt. This is our new daily themed approach to this whole thing. We can't have anything alliterative for Wednesday, simply because I was trying to find a place for the Q&A day. So Q&A will fall on Wednesday, so we have a simple rhyme rather than an alliteration. Yes, we could put Q&A on one of the other days, but I have something in mind for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So see what you think. Let me know in the comments, and away we go. But what I do want to do on Q&A Wednesday is answer specific questions that have been asked in the comments of the YouTube page or using the hashtag AskJeffBollow hashtag on either Twitter or Instagram, or shoot me an email or send me a direct message or something like that, and I will answer your question. So let's jump right into some of the questions that we've seen along the way. What Kind of Blue asks, if someone were to write and send you a screenplay that doesn't come from the Fast Screenplay process, would you consider producing it? So the answer to this question is not anymore. I basically did for about 20 years. I was searching for material to produce just generally out there across the board. I looked through nearly 30,000 project submissions, read close to 7,000 screenplays, and found that fewer than 1 in 1,000 were both viable and something that I would be interested in making. So to solve the problem, I wanted to build an independent film studio. So to solve the problem, I went about and reverse engineered the creative process, designed a step-by-step process that would not get writers to turn their ideas into formulaic screenplays, but that would guide them through the entire process of finding their story, developing something original and compelling and powerful, getting that into a story, a screenplay, refining that until it's solid, tweaking, polishing it, and so it's a page-turner, production-ready screenplay, using notes and feedback to further make sure that it lands the way the writer wants it to land, and then to find and connect with a project's ideal producer. Now, the point of Fast Screenplay, that system that I built, was not to force writers to write for me. It was not to create a system for writers to write stuff for me. It was to help writers get these skills and develop these abilities that all producers need them to have. The problem is, ultimately, writers don't follow through. Writers don't go all the way. So by creating the writer's room module at the end, you can think of it like an 8th phase of the system, really, because it's the phase where we actually learn how to write for production. By building that onto the end of it, then once writers have all those skills, remember, less than 1 in 1,000 projects I found by searching for outside materials. It's not that I would not be open to producing something that was written outside of Fast Screenplay. It's that it's almost impossible for me to find, and I just don't have the resources to continuously search for that needle in the haystack and try to go, hey, there's nope, not quite right. Oh, that's a good, nope. Oh, there's an idea. Nope, doesn't. And so by building these skills, working with these writers, I know that we'll have that common language, and I'll be able to use I'll be able to talk to them in a way they'll understand, and they'll be able to write something that they'll know is aligned with what I'm looking to make, because they'll have developed the skills of understanding that, which is something 99% of writers out there, in my experience anyway, simply do not have. Writers at the professional level, yes, they have that. But as an independent producer, you have to pay those writers at the professional level the 6-figure salaries that they're legitimately worth. The problem is, as an independent producer, you don't have the money to pay for that. And you can't just go throw money at a writer who shows some promise or whose idea looks maybe good or interesting. I can't throw money at that not knowing if they're going to actually be able to deliver, because they don't have those skills fully developed. Writers vastly underestimate the skill and the number of abilities that all factor into creating an effective screenplay, because the page itself is so sparse. And so The long-winded answer is I would absolutely. The problem is that I don't have the resources to continue to look for that. And so I've focused my energy on creating a system that will develop writers, those that want to write for what I'm looking to build, or who simply want to learn how to write for production, can move all the way through into the writer's room, and off we go making those films. Mikey asks, I once heard a piece of advice, and that was, if you want to be a screenwriter, you should first learn to act. The same advice was given if you want to direct. Do you agree with this? Well, so no, because here's the thing. Acting is an incredibly complex and detailed skill set that takes about as long to learn how to do well and effectively as screenwriting does. Directing is another skill. It's an entirely different skill set. Directing is not just about finding the shot. It's also about corralling the troops. It's all about helping an actor understand their motivation and pull the performance out of them. Acting is about finding that emotional truth within you, not to write it, but to express it, to perform it in a realistic, truthful way in that moment, to engage, connect with the other writer on the stage or the screen, to be able to hit your marks in a very technical way while still being truthful in the moment and evoking the emotion within you. There are so many complexities to writing, to directing, and to screenwriting that you shouldn't learn first to do one of the other skills in order to do that. I do recommend taking an acting class, understanding what an actor has to think about, understanding what an actor goes through. I do recommend for writers to take a directing class and understand what directing is all about. I recommend to directors and actors to learn screenwriting and understand how story development works. The more everyone understands everyone else's skill and what they're bringing to this collaborative process, the more powerful we can work together synergistically. So it's not a question of should you learn to do that first. It's you should understand those skills and learn what's involved in those skills as you develop your own craft. Make no mistake about it. Learning how to become a professional level screenwriter without the benefit of a system, it will take between 10 and 20 years to actually learn to do and master. That's the whole reason I built what I built, was to streamline and shrink down that time involved in doing that. But that's what's involved. To do it at a level of mastery, there's a lot of complexity to it. And I don't think you should go out there and put that on hold to learn something else in the meantime, thinking that there's some sort of hierarchy, understanding that is necessary to doing this. I've read lots of great writers who don't know anything about acting or don't know anything about directing, but they understand writing for the screen. They understand writing for production. They understand what an actor does and maybe how they go about getting there, but learning those crafts before learning the craft of screenwriting, I do not think is a viable path. Dimitri6000 asks, is it really that hard to break into the industry as a writer? Maybe the thought of failure is stopping me from making it real. Well, yes and no. The reality is it's a very challenging industry to break into, mostly because you need to not only develop your craft and be able to write at a professional level, write something cinematic, write something that tells a compelling and emotionally engaging and intellectually engaging story that pulls the reader on an emotional roller coaster. But you need to do that within this very specific format in a way that serves what we're ultimately going to be doing, which is making a film out of it. So there are many layers that we need to achieve with it, and you have to kind of master all of those layers, and that simply takes time. So breaking into that industry, a lot of writers, particularly newer writers, have this conception that if you simply write out 100 pages of screenplay, you should then put it into the hands of a producer. And no, that's not Just because you can write something that looks like a screenplay does not mean you've written a screenplay, or it certainly does not mean that you've written a viable screenplay. So it's hard to break into the industry when you've written that. When you've written something extraordinary and exceptional, and you understand how the industry works, and you understand where your project is aligned, it's actually not as hard as you think, because the rarity of actually aligned pro-level material is virtually non-existent. It's very, very hard to find. If you ask horror film producers, they get lots of horror film scripts in, and that's a very popular genre. It's the reason I keep using it as my sort of go-to example. They're always looking for material, but the stuff that comes in, some of it's maybe well written, but it's the same old cliche stories. It uses all the same old cliche tropes. It's uninteresting. It's unimaginative. If you went out and tried to market it, it would be virtually identical to this other film. It's those challenges that make it hard to break in. If you develop your skill and you get some track record, as I'm suggesting you do through this series. I'm suggesting that we learn to write for production. I'm suggesting that we go through this process in the writer's room. We write stuff that we then go out and make, and then you have a credit, and then you have you have that hands-on experience, and then with that you go and further develop. The doors are less closed to you than you think. They look closed when you don't quite have the skill yet to get there. And lastly today, Seedsy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says, won't it be something when your grand plan really gets some traction? I think it absolutely will. For those of you who are new here, the grand plan is to build an independent film studio literally from the ground up with nothing. Starts with this show. Hopefully this show will attract some volunteers and help along the way, but whether it does or not, I'm going out and I'm making a film with nothing, showing that a story-driven movie will find and attract an audience. That is my premise at this point. I could fall on my ass, but that is my premise. If it does, then with nothing, we're going to generate revenue with which we make the next projects. And in that way, we bootstrap. We grow something enormous. We create this grand plan. We continue to grow and expand the system itself until we achieve the master plan, which I'm not going to repeat here. And then we hopefully change the way people think about creativity. Yeah. I think that's going to be something. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.